How can we increase fish populations? World Without Fish by Mark Kurlansky, illustrated by Frank Stockton. People love to eat fish, and it's a main part of some people's diet. But by 2048, most commercial fish species are in danger of never recovering. Kurlansky begins each chapter with a quote from Charles Darwin, and one of the most important points is that biodiversity needs a large variety of bacteria, animals, and plants all working together to have a healthy ecosystem. And when you eliminate one species, it makes it more difficult for all the other species to survive. And an example is a large fish driving the smaller fish up toward the surface of the ocean, giving a chance for the fish that live at the upper part of the ocean to feed, and also for seabirds to dine. But when you remove that large fish from the ocean, maybe due to overfishing, then the small fish don't make it to that upper level, and the fish living there and the seabirds begin to die. This begins a cycle of increasing more plankton, and if fish aren't around to eat the plankton, it begins to rot, turning the ocean orange and pink, poisoning other fish. These are your algae blooms and your red tides. Depleting our fisheries is not good for our ecosystem or our survival. There are less fish in the ocean due to overfishing, pollution, and warming waters. Let's talk about overfishing. Fishermen used to use hook and line and spears, but along came the engine, and we have huge fishing vessels with refrigeration, nets, and trawlers destroying the fish habitat along the bottom of the ocean, plus sonar, not giving the fish a chance. And as our fish get depleted along the shores, the profit-driven industry goes farther out into the ocean and deeper down. For example, off the coast of Chile, the fishing industry found Patagonian toothfish. Wow, there's a lot of fish here. Let's catch them. Well, how are we going to sell them? Let's change the name to Chilean bass so people will order them off the menu. So they went ahead and caught as many fish as they could without doing their research. Patagonian toothfish live to be 150 years old. They grow very slowly and do not start to reproduce until 20 years old. So when all the large fish had been caught, the small fish either couldn't reproduce or couldn't reproduce fast enough. They decimated the population down to 10%. The fishing industry said, well, we'll move on and find another place to fish. Fishery management is very important, and another example is the Atlantic cod in the Grand Banks. The local fishermen for years had been saying we need to close down the fishing to give them a chance to repopulate. But the government and the scientists were saying, no, there's plenty of fish, there's plenty of fish. Well, in 1992, the Canadian Fishing Ministry closed down the Grand Banks due to overfishing. 15 years later, the fish had not recovered. It is now more than 30 years later, and the fish have started to recover a small amount. And we hope that another 20 years, maybe we could start to fish Atlantic cod again, but we don't know. There are less fish in our ocean due to pollution. Everything we do affects marine life. Our garbage, waste, poisonous factory products, and industrial agriculture. These pollutants flow downstream, producing more phytoplankton, eliminating the oxygen from the water, killing the fish, leaving huge dead zones in the deltas. But where do the pollutants go? They don't dissolve. The chromium, mercury, PCBs, and the lead attach themselves to fatty tissue in the plants and the animals. And the higher up the food chain we eat, the more we ingest. We also have pollution from the big oil spills. And yes, they can be cleaned up along the surface, but over 40 years later, we find that icky goo affecting marine life in the marshes. There are less fish in the ocean due to warming waters. Cold seas are richer in fish, but the ones that live in the tropics can live within a certain temperature range, but the water in the tropics is becoming too warm, and they're finding that those fish are swimming north to be in colder waters. They are competing for food with the fish who are already in the northern areas. Warmer ocean water also absorbs more carbon, which sounds great, but it slows down the growth of fish and also affects their reproduction. Mark Kurlansky talks about different options that we can use to try to increase the amount of fish in our oceans. We start with fish farming, which sounds great because people can control the amount of fish, and if we need more, we can grow more. However, the fish are raised in overcrowded pens, producing a lot of waste which leaks into nearby waters. The fish swim less and lose muscle tissue, so the quality of fish is less. They also lose their survival skills. They don't have to fight against predators or adjust their temperatures. And if we ever released future generations of fish back into the wild, they may not survive. Fish farming also depends on wild fish. Huge nets the size of factories scoop up as much fish as they can, grind it up into pellets, and it takes 4 pounds of wild fish to feed 1 pound of farmed fish. Fish farms do not preserve wild fisheries. We can implement fishing quotas, which will regulate the type, the size, and the amount of fish that fishermen catch. However, once the fish are brought on deck, most of them are dead. So if a fisherman has caught too much, they're throwing a bunch of dead fish overboard. We can limit the time that fishermen can catch fish, maybe if they only go out 2 months out of the year. However, this favors the most destructive type of fishing, using draggers to catch as many fish as they can in the shortest amount of time. We can also close off fishing areas on a rotational basis. But one never knows how long it's going to take fish to recover. Look at the Grand Banks. There are 2 options that seem to be working better than the others. One is self-regulation. New England fishermen meet a certain quantity of fish at the end of the year. No limit on days, no throwbacks. And they are finding that the fishermen are better at managing the local fisheries than the government. They are still closely monitored by the government, so they're working together. But the fishermen are invested in their jobs. This is their livelihood. They want the fish populations to survive. They care the most. The next option is sustainable fishing, which works right along with self-regulation. And this is giving the consumer a choice. Would you like line caught or net caught? Now we need to educate the consumer about the difference, but line caught is going to be better for the fish and the fishermen. They can make more money on less fish, and they have less regulation. Mark Kurlansky puts a lot of detail into World Without Fish. And individually, we can help by eating lower on the food chain, getting involved, and learning more about the oceans. And we can start with this book. Thanks for watching, keep reading, and have a great week.